Hi, this is Kurt Johnson doing a Mindful Monday from Shawbucks, downtown Jamestown, New York, on Chautauqua Lake, across the street from the National Comedy Center. Hope you guys are having a good week or off to a good start. This week's topic is why I chose a homeless guy to build my Kurt B. Johnson website. You can find my new website. I'm announcing it today. Kurt, K-U-R-T-B, as in being Johnson, kurtbjohnson.com. And I'm going to be uploading all my YouTube videos, Facebook videos, and giving information and content on everything that from the Mindful Eatery Project at Shawbucks. I'll talk more about the energy within me, which is my experiential philosophy based on my life's experiences. But it's basically an information gathering center. So if what I do interests you, and on that website, you'll find an interview I did with this guy, Adam, who I met homeless. Layla and I met him. I could tell he was probably a business guy going through a hard time. I could see him shooting what I was assuming was YouTube videos. And about a week into it, I'm walking Layla. I've been wanting to build a Kurt B. Johnson website for 15 years, since I went to a Hay House Writers Workshop and learned that the first thing you need is a website and self-promotion and social media, and then your book comes. Well, I'm still in that 15-year process. But anyway, I met Adam, and he said, as you probably know, I'm homeless, and I'm starting up a business that I used to do 20 years ago. I'm a computer geek. I used to build websites, and I'm starting a business building websites. So I needed a website. He could use an income so that he could move away from being homeless. So that's the initial reason why I chose a homeless guy to build a website. But also he gave me a bulletproof proposal to do so. And he offered to do two sites at once, Shawbucks and Kurt B. Johnson. So it was just a win-win. And I've looked at many proposals before, and he came through with a very clear proposal, so I knew he could do what he said he was going to do, and I felt confident that he just wasn't going to take half down and run away. So if you want to check this interview out and you want to check out Kurt B. Johnson, please stop, check us out. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, Kurt B. Johnson. So let's rock and roll. Have a great week. For the quote of the week, nobody can make you angry without your consent, but also no one can make you feel anything with your consent. And one thing I want to add to that is Kyle Cease. I have this book here. I just went to the Next Level Ascension Conference, and in there I witnessed him working with feelings and with a girl that just totally transformed between all our eyes. Kyle Cease is amazing, and I look forward to having him here in Jamestown. But literally, his thing was, it's okay to feel unworthy. It's okay to feel these things, because what you resist seems to persist and project more, and you don't have to feel the guilt and shame and all that. And the only reason we get angry is out of judgment and fear. That's my main topic for Mindful Mondays is, fear separates us from love and it returns us to love. And angry is just an emotional frequency between the poles of love and fear. And I wanted to add what Kyle Cease, I learned from him, is don't beat yourself up if you feel insecure. Feel it, enjoy it, allow it to happen, see where it feels in your body, and somehow that alone just releases it. No different than tapping or any of these other many techniques I've learned over the past 20 years since I've been pursuing this energy within me philosophy that I developed. But anyhow, you guys have a great week. Just remember, nobody can make you feel anything with your consent or actually hold on to any feeling without your consent. It's up to you. Life is choice because it's always changing. Love you guys. See you next week. Hi, my name's Kurt Johnson. I own Shawbucks, downtown Jamestown, New York. I do these Mindful Mondays and post them on Shawbucks called Welcome to Mindful Mondays. You can't be happy all week if you don't start on Monday, should you choose to be happy. And I've been working on this development called the Mindful Eatery Project. And my goal is it's mainly about food, thought, and environment. And I've been working to find the right person to develop a website for not just Shawbucks, but also Kurt B. Johnson. I've been developing content for YouTube, Facebook, and I want to catch the other places, but I'm not quite the tech guy that I need to be, so I need someone that could assist and understand these things. And today I'm interviewing a new friend of mine. I would call him like a new best old friend. His name's Adam Bees. And I met him. I walk my dog every morning in the Riverwalk area, anytime between 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And I saw him there a few times doing his own video, and I knew I could tell he was a professional and whatnot. And one day I wound up just talking with him and he said he was starting up a business and he's a graphic designer, professional photographer, and he's going to build websites. So I was like, I need a website built. And our conversation started there. And I guess today's topic is why I chose a homeless guy to assist me in building my website. And it's quite simple. Adam is extremely intelligent, extremely kind. Like I said, he's like a new best old friend, and he actually gets the concepts of this Mindful Eatery Project as we've spent time together. It's only been maybe a little over a week, maybe 2 weeks, getting to know each other, and I'm feeding him the information of my web design and what the Mindful Eatery Project is at Shawbucks. So the key here is why I chose a homeless guy to build my website. And I always use a quote of the day, and the quote of the day is, nobody can make you angry without your consent. And actually, nobody can make you feel anything without your consent. And we'll get into that later on. But I think that ties into the topic for today and how Adam wound up becoming homeless and me having the great fortune of meeting him. I mean, it's a two-way street here. He's totally and truly helping me as much as I'm his first client. He's my first guy that's going to actually build this Kurt B. Johnson website. So this is a mutual relationship agreement. I'm really not doing anything out of the ordinary. So I'd like to introduce you to Adam Bees.
Yeah.
Adam.
Yeah, I mean, you said, why would I hire a homeless guy to build a website? And people are going to be wondering, well, how is a homeless guy building websites in the first place? And how, if he knows all this stuff, how did he get there in the first place? So I guess I can talk briefly about how that took place.
Yes.
So about 2 years ago, August of 2022, my life was totally flipped upside down. And a little bit of background before I get into what happened there. I was what's called a user experience designer, a senior level lead user experience designer for big companies based out of Rochester, New York, Pittsburgh. I've worked for companies in Boston and all over the place. It's basically a glorified term for a graphic designer / programmer that works in software and creates not just what the aesthetics and what the software looks like, but how people interact with it and trying to make something that's intuitive and easy to use. And so I had that career I was in that career for about 10 years prior to that, graphic design, software development, that upbringing. I went to art school in the mid-1990s. And so, after 2020 hit, myself, like most other people, went through all kinds of problems. It was a roller coaster ride, not just for me, but for everybody else. And, I'm going to keep this a little bit shorter, but I started to get really angry about a lot of the things that the government was doing to us. The businesses being shut down and people being put out of business.
All of us included.
Yeah, and so I had a lot of friends going through a lot of stuff. And, I've been like the neighborhood conspiracy theorist since I was in my early 20s.
Me too.
I have my own theories as to what's going on, and I talk about this a lot. If you look up my YouTube channel, it's easy to find. If you look up my name, I get into that in a lot more detail there. But some of the things that I experienced was watching my friends, watching everybody go crazy during 2020. And in late 2021, in the fall, when the vaccine came out and all of this stuff was being pushed on us and more or less
Forced on us.
Forced on
People
us.
were losing their jobs,
Yeah, people were losing their jobs. I was watching friends have to make the decision, do I take this shot or do I lose my job? One of my best friends at the time, her father took the shot and he was dead in 48 hours. 3 hours after he took the shot, he was rushed into the emergency room, wheeled into the back room. His family got to say goodbye with their masks on there. I mean, just imagine your last moments in life. You're in this back room of a hospital after taking a shot, surrounded by your family with these goofy masks on their face, and that's how you left the world. So I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
and my mom reads lips. I mean, it was really hard, the whole thing, and hard on everyone. But go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. So I wasn't going to do it. And so I had a remote job. I worked from home. I had been working from home since 2015, but this particular company I'd been working from home since 2019. I had my own office, lived in a really nice house out in Amish country in western PA. There was a 30-foot waterfall next to the house that was surrounded by state game lands, woods, beautiful home, fireplaces, the whole nine. I had a detached building that was my office. And that's where I did my work. From there, I would go into the city from time to time. I worked for a company that was based in Pittsburgh. I was about an hour away. I would go in, but I didn't have to go to the office to do my job. And they gave me an ultimatum, and I think it was like November of 2021, saying, if you don't take that vaccine, we're going to terminate you. You're out the door.
Oh, wow.
And so,
That's
long story short, I went to the next all-company Zoom meeting and told off a group of 100 people that they don't bother me for the next 2 weeks because I'm going to be too busy playing my Xbox to bother with doing any work for you guys, because if that's how you're going to roll,
I think
good
we
luck.
a lot of people felt that way. Some didn't.
So I let them fire me. But I was bitter and angry, and all this stuff had built up over time. And plus, I'd been paying attention to the wrongdoings of our government for years. And so even though I found a new job, I went through 4 months. I racked up a bunch of credit card debt. I was in the hole. I was just starting to dig out of it. But I was just angry about all this stuff.
The stress levels had to be enormous.
And so that's why I had to give the backstory a little bit, because in August of 2022, it was the week that Donald Trump's house was raided in Florida, at Mar-a-Lago. And we're watching this on the news, and, myself and the people I'm around were having our conversations about it. And I got riled up, and I started posting things on a social media site called Gab.
Okay.
And it's basically a backwoods social media platform where angry Republicans that got kicked off of all the other platforms, and at the time Twitter and Facebook, and people were getting kicked off of all the platforms for their political speech.
Right.
And so I'm in this echo chamber surrounded by people who are all saying the same thing. And so I get into this heated political conversation during the week after Trump's raid, and I got pretty nasty, full of pretty hateful things. I said a lot of really bad things. I'm not going to swear today because we're in a nice place and everything.
No,
but,
the Robert H. Jackson Center is gorgeous.
But I said a lot of things, basically. The one that got me in trouble out of a series of really nasty social media posts, I found a job posting on the IRS website that was circulating around the interwebs that morning. And it said it was a job listing for new IRS revenue agents, but at the bottom of the ad, and this was on irs.gov, in big red letters, it said, must be willing to use deadly force. And everybody's passing this around. Like, must be willing to use deadly force for a tax collector? Like, they're going to come shooting us now because we didn't pay our taxes? And so people were posting this and sharing it. It went viral, and the IRS took the job posting down before lunch that day. But I took a screenshot of it. And underneath as my caption when I posted it, I said, if you mother effing feds show up at my door and kick down my door, I'll be waiting for you and I'll slaughter all of you.
Right.
And I was just I was talking smack. I was just angry and just venting,
Right.
and there were thousands of other people saying the same thing. In fact, on the news that week, Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, said that they had an unprecedented number of threats against the FBI during that week. They couldn't even keep up with all of it.
Right.
So I really wasn't thinking anything of it. At one point, towards the end of the week, I was thinking, I should just delete this account because this isn't doing me any good.
Right.
I need to just get off of this and go do my own thing and not worry about this crap anymore. So that
Right.
was a Friday evening.
So you had the realization it's getting caught up, you're caught up,
I'm
and
caught
it's
up
gone
in
too
this.
far.
It's gone
and-
too far.
Yeah.
So I took my son out to dinner at our favorite restaurant Friday afternoon. It was about 6. I was really tired. I go on a lot of outdoor adventures, and my son and I had just gotten back from a long backpacking trip through the Allegheny National Forest. I could barely keep my eyes open, and so we went out to eat, came home. I went straight to bed. All of a sudden, I'm woken and out of a sleep because I hear boom, boom, boom. And at first, I wake up and I sit out of my bed, and I'm like, what's he doing up there? I'm like, my son.
Okay.
I'm thinking did he drop something? Maybe he went to get a snack in the kitchen and he dropped something heavy on the floor. I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, maybe I'll just deal with it tomorrow. I'm tired. I started to go back to sleep. And then I hear boom, 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 like again. And I'm like, something's going on.
Wow.
And so I'm living in the middle of the woods in Pennsylvania, and it's gun country, and
Right.
I'm a redneck just like the rest of my neighbors.
Right.
I grabbed one of the guns that was next to my bed. I go running upstairs, and I start hearing glass breaking. I start hearing all this noise. But my bedroom is in the basement of this house. It's light-proof. It's soundproof.
Right.
The only thing that you could hear was like this thud. Like somebody's banging, like you're in a multi-floor apartment and someone's stomping on the floor.
Right.
And that's all you could hear from the bedroom. And so I come upstairs with a gun in my hand. My whole house is surrounded by the FBI
Wow.
in full body armor, M16s, a bunch of red dots pointed at my chest. They had a tank sitting outside the house that they had used a battering ram to smash. That's what I heard in the
Right.
basement. They were smashing the house apart with a tank. They were running around. They had snipers and everything else. And so now I drop the gun. I come out of the house. I get hogtied in my front yard. And then I'm dragged off to federal prison, where I spent 20 months in federal prison because of these social media posts. And so how did I become homeless? Well, it's a long story. I had ties in Jamestown. I don't need to get into for this video.
You had a
I
relationship,
had a relationship, and so I was supposed to come home to Jamestown and pick up my relationship where it left off. And within a couple of weeks after my release, I wasn't even able to really get on my feet yet, and I was tossed out into the street, homeless, just out of the blue. And I kind of knew it was coming from the day I came home from prison, but how can you prepare for something like that after you've just been released and you're just trying to start putting your life back together
Right.
after this traumatic experience that you went through? And so I was thrown out into the street. I had a 60-pound backpack, a couple of trekking poles, and whatever I thought I would need to try and figure things out in this backpack. And I walked the 6 miles to Jamestown. I found the local homeless shelter, got connected with various people in town, and I've just been kind of living the dream ever
Right.
since. And so I started doing these daily video posts. My best friend, who lives in Texas, and that's where I'm planning on moving next week, actually, and to basically get started with life again. My best friend was like, you should document this when because you're being thrown out there. People would be interested in this and interested in your story.
Yeah.
And so I was really against it at first. I don't got time for this. I don't got time for this. I'm homeless, dude. How am I gonna juggle YouTube videos and all this other stuff?
Yeah.
Well, after I got settled in at the shelter and some other things, I went for a walk the following day. And I was just walking around with nothing except my phone in my pocket. And so I thought about it for a minute. And so I sat down on one of the park benches at the Riverwalk. And I just started speaking whatever came out of my mouth. No, off the cuff, kind of like we're doing right now.
Right.
And I just started to tell the story. And that turned into telling the story every day for the last, I think today was day 114.
Okay.
Since the day I was thrown out to the streets. And so I've been using the resources available here in town, including the Pendergast Library. Prendergast.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't pronounce
That's
anything
good.
properly here.
No, I don't either.
Because I'm the new guy in town.
Right.
But the library has really good resources. It's almost like I have a workstation there and Wi-Fi and everything I need to do what I've been doing. But the synchronicity of it all these opportunities have been popping up in my life because of these videos. I met you out on the Riverwalk because of doing these videos.
Right.
And it just kind of happened out of nowhere at the right time. And there's been other people that have popped into my life and other opportunities that are coming my way that all came about because I decided to sit down and shoot these videos every day. And so who knows, maybe, I believe sometimes things happen for a reason and you don't always know the reason for it.
Right.
And so I'm starting to think, okay, maybe the reason I had to go through some of that trauma, some of it was my own stupidity.
Right.
And my own dumb running my big mouth when I shouldn't have. Basically I describe it as the kind of things you'd say sitting around a campfire talking to your friends.
Right.
And
yet it's going out globally.
but
and
I
you're
just
not
put it
thinking
in.
of it
I
that
put it
way.
online in a backwoods social media site that I don't think anybody's paying that much attention to. So I'm just preaching to the choir kind of a thing.
Right.
But it blew up, and they turned this into a big national news story. Everybody I know found out about it because it was on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC. What's the other one? CBS, Nightly News, all the major newspapers, Washington Times, Washington Post, New York Times, all the Buffalo, New York papers and TV stations, Pittsburgh and Rochester, all the cities I had a connection to because of my job or family, or because I kind of grew up in Western New York, but I lived in Pittsburgh for about 25, 30 years.
Okay.
So that was a big story around that region, but nationally, I had my best friend in Texas said that his brother in Alaska called him and said, "Hey, I saw your boy on Fox News. What's going on?"
Oh, man.
And so that's how everybody knew.
Right.
Before I even went to my arraignment, they knew what was going on. And so, there's a lot more to talk about, but I know, we've got a limited amount of time, and I'm going to give you a turn here, but that's the background of it.
No, I appreciate that. It feels to me like you were made an example of just to keep other people quiet from voicing their opinions. And I just remember how frustrating it was that people that I follow were getting silenced. Medical doctors and scientists weren't even allowed to speak their truth. And my purpose for developing, during COVID, just a little background on me and why I'm doing this. The name of my podcast is ChangePoint, and I developed that to assist in creating a clear vision beyond 2020. And I know back in 2020, I was surprised no one was using that for their political campaign. But so that's what ChangePoint is. But the reason my heart goes out to Adam, and I actually donate quite often, probably not enough, to the Union Gospel Mission. I think the name of it changed now.
UCAN.
UCAN. And I've done that forever because I had an experience, a Texas experience, where if it wasn't for my parents escaping me out of this insane asylum, I probably would have wound up homeless too. It took my parents 5 weeks to come and get me. I went through North Parkland Hospital, and then I wound up in Terrell, Texas. And I don't know how much of this story I want to get into right now, but I literally went from 165 pounds to 111 pounds in less than 5 weeks. So the homeless shelters and the way that we treat people, mean a lot to me. And you could say I was written off at that age. And my parents, when they finally got me home, see, they were told I wouldn't function again in normal society. Not only did I function, I actually thrived. Since that time, my goal has become clear to me to share these lessons and experience with others so that they can not only survive but also thrive. But what truly allowed this transformation to happen within me was a realization I wasn't defined by other people's fears and judgment. So, since that time, understanding, my goal is to simply assist other people to get the freedom from other people's fears and judgment, but more importantly, the freedom from the imprisonment of their own fears and judgment. And I can see in the world now that fear and judgment pulls us apart, makes us homeless, and that's what this whole Mindful Eatery Project is about. And so Adam's been listening to me. He gets this. He's also a computer programmer, and the way I look at myself, I have two minds. I have an experiential philosophy. I don't necessarily have a great memory, but in place of that, I have an experiential philosophy. And if I can tap into that experiential philosophy, I seem to be able to remember things. But so Adam and I have spent time together because he's not only building the Shawbuck's new website, but he's building the Kurt B. Johnson website. And I've been wanting to do that since 2012 when I took a writer's workshop and Greg Braden was in it. My wife allowed me to go to Colorado. And one of the first things was to get your own domain name with your name on it. So no matter what book, whatever you're involved in, moves forward. And I haven't had the right person or the connection or felt the time was right. And meeting Adam and in the park, just coincidentally, Layla introduced us. And before I met Adam, Layla and I made one of his videos, that. And so when Adam first met me, he goes, "You got to check me out, this, that, and the other." And I was like, "You know what?" And he was upfront and honest with me, and I appreciated that. And I knew I wanted to use him or investigate his intelligence or what he truly knew, and if he could actually perform building a website and graphic design and assisting me brand Mindful Eatery and the Kurt B. Johnson information. And I knew he could, and we met with a friend of mine, Chris Lee, who's also assisting me. Chris is a great musician. We speak Canadian. He assists me in more ways than one, but he also knows technology and that. So I simply set up a meeting with Adam, myself, and Chris Lee. And Chris Lee listened to Adam's presentation. We looked at each other. We winked and said, he's more than capable. And so then after that, I hadn't creeped Adam to find the stories and look at, what he was doing and whatnot. And I'm a risk taker, and that's what an entrepreneur does. And I felt to give this relationship the best thing is to, instead of creeping them first and then seeing, what our business deal would be or how things were going to work out, Adam had thrown a very reasonable number at me to build and develop a website and maintain it. So it's not like a one-stop shop. It's building a relationship so he can follow and develop. And so it wasn't until after we made our deal that I actually went to YouTube and I watched a couple of his videos, and then some of the other feeds came up with the negative things about what a bad guy is and can you believe this? And it was the sarcasm you typically see on news. And at first I jumped and said, "Oh my God, what am I doing? What did I do?" Because I already put a deposit in to do this website. And then quickly right after that, it's like, it doesn't matter. This is what life's about. It's about experiential learning. It's about attempting to use non-judgmental situations to create a life in harmony. And that's what the Mindful Eatery is about. So this type of story, hits my heart. But also, I could have been homeless. So I'm always walking the dog, talking to the homeless. They're nice people. They're not generally violent. A lot of them are doing drugs all night long and they're whacked out and you don't want to get too close and whatnot. But I refuse to not walk the river walk. And there's a bunch of us that walk the river walk that I meet and talk to. I call us the river walkers. And we're just there to enjoy the river walk. It's an amazing location in downtown Jamestown, and it doesn't get used a lot, but we love it there, and it's a great place to do video and interact with people. So that's my story, and I apologize for getting choked up. I didn't, you know, I tell it so many times now, but
that's happened to me a number of times. I mean, when I was in federal prison for the last 4, they put me in 4 different places over the ride that I was on. But when I was in Danbury, Connecticut, which is where Steve Bannon is right now, if that would be what people might
and
recognize.
who's Steve Bannon, just for...
Yeah, one of Trump's people.
Okay.
I don't know exactly. One of Trump's advisors. He was part of his team early on in 2016 and whatnot. And then they parted ways, but I don't know all the details there. But that's where they sent Steve Bannon to prison for contempt of Congress or something like that, and that's where they've put him.
So he was up in the same area?
Well, I wasn't there at the same time as him, but that's how people might know. But I had gotten into...
And it's a lower level.
Yeah, it's a lower security level, but I only spent 4 months there. Up until that 4 months, it was a pretty rough ride. But the last 4 months...
And you were outside of Pittsburgh prior to that?
I was in Butler County Prison. I was in a place outside of Youngstown that was really crazy. I was in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn for about a month, and then Danbury, Connecticut. And the stories, I mean, I got 5 to 10 hours of stories from that experience.
I can only imagine.
But in Danbury, the whole time I was locked up. Now I believe in God, and I've always believed in Jesus and the God through pretty much since my mid-20s. But, part of the reason why I went off the rails like I did back in 2022, I hadn't really gone to church in quite a while. And I was just doing my own thing, and I was like, I believe in it, but I didn't really dig deep into, I wasn't reading the Bible anymore. I wasn't going to church anymore, but I never stopped believing in it. But if I had been going to church, if I'd been surrounded by the people that I would be surrounded by going to church every week, I wouldn't have posted stuff like that, because I would have been thinking, I don't want the people at church reading this. I'm going to go show up at church after they read this, and they're all going to be giving me stink eye all day. And so
you reflect the people you hang around with, if you...
And I'd been a hermit for a few years, living out in the middle of literally out in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
And you worked in your own office at home.
I was isolated, but you talk about fear.
Yes.
And how
that's my big topic, Fear and Love Create movement. But go ahead, that's the Mindful Monday stuff.
I'm a Star Wars fan. And so what is one of the things that Yoda teaches us? That fear leads to anger.
Oh, yeah.
And then anger leads to the dark side.
Right.
And so, I was angry back in 2022 when I got all riled up and started saying all this garbage online.
Right.
But it was coming from a place of being afraid of seeing all the stuff that's going on and watching this country fall apart and watching these little tyrants that run their individual states acting like a bunch of dictators, telling us we can't, who are you to tell these people that they can't make a living and have their businesses?
Right. We closed for a year at Shawbucks. I just didn't want to participate.
And I know people that wouldn't shut their business down. They refused, and they went through all kinds of, the hassle and got, were getting stomped on by the government over that. And it took a long time of them fighting to get that, thrown out of court. And, eventually one of the judges in Pennsylvania that put a stop to that ended up being the judge in my case, ironically. The judge that told Tom Wolf, the governor of PA, that he's no longer able to enforce these unconstitutional mandates, he was the judge in my case.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of weird coincidences and synchronicities going on there. But
life is once upon a coincidence.
That fear, it's like the people in charge, they just want everybody to be in this perpetual state of fear.
You can control people better when they're afraid.
Yeah, if people were confident and felt secure and felt safe and felt like they belonged to a community and a family, they would then their will be done. You know, when it comes to politics, the number of people in charge are far outweighed by the number of people they are supposedly in charge of. And the only way that there's two ways that they keep everybody down. Number one is keeping everybody afraid and keeping everybody divided. And I mean, ever since Donald Trump became president in 2016, or 2017 when he took over, but during that time, you've never seen a bigger divide between right and left, and just this group of people hates this group of people, and all the division. I used to get along with everybody. It didn't matter about politics, but I would say by the time 2022 came around, I was very entrenched in. There were a lot of people that I had just completely cut out of my life, and a lot of people that had cut me out of their life over our disagreements on things like the vaccine and wearing the masks and all that nonsense. But there's a lot of division, a lot of fear, and then the other way that they control people is by, the bread and circus. Most people in America, what they care about the most is beer and football. And if you notice, during COVID, they took away the football, but they kept the beer. You could still go to the liquor store. If they had gotten rid of both, there would have been a major uprising.
And I like football, so don't get me wrong, but for me, it feels like it's the Roman circus.
Yeah.
Like these things keep playing over and over, and I enjoy sports. I like it. I watch it, but I watch it for what it is. It's just another distraction in life. And so I don't like the liberals, I don't like the conservatives, and yet I'm a liberal conservative. I'm both. And as far as anger goes, anger, you think it's bad, but nothing's truly bad or good, but it's our thinking that makes it so. Because angry, if you're out in the woods, what causes someone to die when they get lost in the woods? I don't know if you've heard this or not. But
no, go ahead.
So lost in the woods, they sit down on a log and they start beating themselves up.
Okay.
I'm worthless. I'm so stupid. What are people going to think? And you start thinking other people's thoughts, But if you got angry and you got pissed off and you start dropping some F-bombs or you get off that woods, you might create movement to get out of the woods.
I've been there.
So fear is not all bad, and it's, in these energy within me that maybe we have time to get into later on, like how fear and love create movement. Fear is not all bad because it can be a return to love through the discomfort. And I don't want to jump off of our topic where we are just now, but I just wanted to mention that, with angry, the things I've learned about going back to my Texas experience, I was kind of on a high because I had learned from Wed Howard, the announcer for the Ed Sullivan Show. Him and his wife wrote and edited TV commercials. He had a radio show, What's My Line? And when Joe Cal and I rode our motorcycles to Texas, I wound up tinting windows, and I just happened to meet Wed Howard, and I tinted his car windows. He had MS, and I tinted his windows with the car in, and we just hit it off, but I'll try to keep it short. But he gave me the 3 key principles for advertisement. And because I was tinting his windows, and he knew I was from up north, and he found out I rode my motorcycle. He asked me if I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. I said, I want to start my own window tinting business. And I was only like 19 at the time. And he was impressed with that, and he asked me if I had a name, and I said, Advanced Auto Tint. And he was like, well, that's great. Do you have a slogan? And he said, because it winds up in the yellow pages. And he asked me about a slogan, and so I didn't have one. I didn't know I needed one. So when I went to his house, he said, I want to teach you the key 3 principles of advertising. There's 3 things that you have to include in every ad, regardless of if you can make them fit or not. And they might sound similar, but there's 3 things. So when I got to his house, he gave me the slogan for Advanced Auto Tint in his big, deep radio voice. And he goes, you've got it made in the shade with Advanced Auto Tint. I mean, that's brilliant. So I knew I was with a guy with a wealth of knowledge, and there was all those celebrities in his room from the Ed Sullivan Show and What's My Line and all the other stuff that Wed was involved in. And he was also one of the first Marlboro men. So I think I was smoking Marlboro Reds back then, so that might have assisted us. But these 3 key principles for advertising is how Wed explained it was people want to feel good and look good. people want to feel safe, and people want to feel protected. So include all those things in your advertisement, and you'll go well. They'll be knocking down your doors. So not only, this is 40 years ago, so a lot of these topics, I've been unfolding and unpackaging and learning this information, what Howard gave me, for 40 years. So it's not like I might not be able to explain it where someone gets it overnight. But so when I did the window tint ad, you know what I mean, that it'll make you safer in your car, because if you're in an accident, the film on the window will keep it shattering on you. It'll protect your interior from the sun. It'll protect your possessions from people seeing in. It also reflects 99% of the sun's rays out of your car. So, I included all those things in. And I did the ad so well, when I finally did go in business for myself, I attracted the guy that wrote the Rolex commercial, How Do You Spell Relief? And he was impressed with my ad. He talked to me on the phone. I guess when he first came in, he asked, could I speak to the owner? And he had a 733i, which was an expensive car back then. And my first thought was, oh shit, what do I gotta do? And he said, well, I loved your ads. I read all the ads. I'm an advertisement. And he went on to say that it was you I talked to on the phone. Now I'm here to pick up my car. You did exactly everything you said you were going to do, and you're only 20, And so he basically kind of offered me a job, and I know I have the invoices. Someday I'm going to go through all the old invoices I found in my parents' attic. But I think the key play here is feelings, that we all want to feel safe, we all want to feel good and look good, and we want to feel protected. Life unfolds once upon a feeling. And then I had an experience at the age of 40, and it led me to another deeper truth, and I started studying and researching. And the quote in a book was the Eleanor Roosevelt quote, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. And now 2 and 2 come together with what Howard said. I came to a realization that no one can make you feel anything without your consent. It's up to you. Life is choice because it's always changing. That's one of my favorite lines. And I believe life happens at first heartbeat, the first intelligence. It's not something, I don't know when to get into that right now. But so when we're living life and we're looking at it, you choose your feelings. No one can make you angry without your consent. No one can make you feel worthy without your consent. And also no one can make you feel unworthy without your consent. What we're talking about today is nobody can make you angry without your consent. It's your choice. Life is choice. If you're angry, it's something that you just attracted or whatnot. And we're all going to get angry at some point. But if you're going to stay angry, it's up to you. You're the one picking up the rock to throw it at someone that's hot amber, and you're the one getting burnt. Old wisdom says if you want revenge, dig 2 graves. And I think we're at the time now that this is very important, relevant. Being angry is not bad. It's not good. It's got positives. It's got negatives. Authentic love is good. Artificial love feels bad. But there's this whole common thing. And with your instant, you were angry. We talked about angry. But if you're lost in the woods, angry's not bad.
No.
It's going to get you off that log.
I can pick right up there because I'm an outdoorsman. I can live out of a backpack for weeks at a time in the woods. I've gone on long hikes. I'm comfortable with that. I've gone on 1,000-mile bicycle rides, living off of what I can carry on the bike. My longest one-day bike ride's 174 miles. So I've done things like that. And the only difference between being homeless this time and being homeless on purpose for weeks at a time, living out of a pickup truck, mini camper, a tent, a backpack, whatever the adventure may be, living off of a canoe for a week,
right?
Whatever. The only difference this time was all those other times I had a home to go home to when it was all over. So I wasn't completely afraid of this, but I was also terrified of it because it's all unknown. But there's a story a few years ago, a woman, this is right along the lines of what you were talking about, a woman was walking through the Smoky Mountains National Park on one of the hiking trails and probably went without a map, thought, I'll just follow the trail, probably a little bit unprepared for what you might be getting into because you think, oh, we're just going on a short little hike.
Right.
We'll be right back. We'll be coming right back to the car. And even if I'm going on a short little hike like that, I'm going to take a compass. I'm going to take like even a camelback with some basic necessities. Maybe not a shelter and everything else, but I'm gonna have a knife, a compass, drinking water, some snacks, and some sort of map. But this woman, she just went on a little day hike, and she got lost, and she was lost for days. And they sent search parties out to try and find her and everything else. And it was like you said. Some people, when they get into that situation, they start to feel worthless. They start to feel like, I guess it's just time to give up.
The shame, the guilt.
The shame, the guilt, all of it. I just give up. I don't know what to do. Well, they found her. They found her body.
Okay.
She didn't make it.
Oh.
She starved, but she was keeping a little journal. And so that's how the things that she was writing in her notes were just along the lines of what she had just given up.
Wow.
But the saddest part of the story is she was about 25 to 30 yards from the main hiking trail.
Oh, no.
Where she gave up. She had been going around in circles and just wandering through the woods.
Oh, man.
And she was 25 yards from a well-marked,
right,
easy to follow trail. Now, whether she chooses the right direction when she gets to the trail, but if you make it to a main trail like that in a place like that and you're that close, she was pretty close to where the parking lot, I don't know what parking lot she started from, but this is the most popular or one of the most popular national parks in the country. So there's going to be, if you're on the main trail, somebody's going to come by probably within a day or so. And she had given up, and she just basically plopped down and just totally gave up.
So if she got angry and was stomping through the woods, she might have. So angry's not all bad.
No.
But to act on anger, you know what I mean?
So in my situation, when I first became homeless, one of the first things I did was just started grinding and looking for a job, any job I can find here locally in Jamestown. I don't care if it's minimum wage. I don't care if it's Burger King. I don't care.
Right.
And so I started filling out all kinds of applications, and I was getting interviews in lots of places. And I was being upfront with people about my situation, about the fact that I have a criminal record and what happened, and we talked about it. And most people were very understanding and said, oh, that seems like you got railroaded a bit. We don't think that's a problem. You can work here.
Right.
And I got hired twice to come work for, I'm not going to say who.
Right.
But I was hired twice in a span of 3 weeks. And I show up on my first day, and they're like, oh, sorry, you can't work here. Corporate human resources
fear and judgment changed their hire policy.
Right. And I'm not going to get into it any more than that, but it became brutal. I've applied to more than 400 companies, both in my line of work for remote jobs, software companies. I've applied for countless, just any job I can get, and nothing was happening. And so I could be like that woman in the woods, right? I could just be like, you know what, I give up, whatever. I'm just gonna be homeless. I'm just gonna, that's the end of it. Forget it. Nobody wants me. Nobody wants to deal with me. I'm worthless. I'm this and that and the other thing. Just give up. So I'm like, okay, what do I do next? I'm starting lots of different little income streams. I have a photography store on Etsy and other places. I'm selling my photography, fine art prints. I have a YouTube channel now that's monetized. I'm not making a lot of money at
114 videos, one every day.
Yeah, I got about 13, closing in on 1,300 subscribers.
No, and when I went to that, I've got 55 subscribers. I haven't tried to push my content, and I do it very infrequent. Right?
So I have a few other little things I'm working on, but I decided, you know what? I ran my own business for about 6 years doing multimedia design, websites, digital marketing, and those kinds of things for small to medium-sized businesses. And I even had a few large corporate clients when I did that. And I did it for about 6 years. And it ended around the stock market crash of 2008, 2009. And I transitioned from running my own business to going to work for bigger software companies. And so I thought to myself one day, why don't I just go back to doing that? I came up with a company name and a domain name for it. And all I did was put it out there in the world. I'm starting this business. This is what I'm
You
going to do.
developed it.
I didn't develop anything. I have
But
a
you
domain
put-
name. I
yeah.
just put it in the universe. I mentioned it a
Right.
couple times on my videos.
Right.
And then boom, 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 boom,
But you
boom.
went through the process. You bought the domain name. You know what I mean?
But
That's
all
what I
did.
meant.
I have a name
And
of a
sometimes
business.
that's all it takes to keep getting moving.
Yeah,
Little
all I
momentum.
did was put it out in the universe,
Yeah.
if you will, that this is what I'm thinking of doing. And then all these people just started coming to me.
Right.
You know, there's a few prospects that have come my way that I'm putting out bids on to do their projects and talking about them, about their business and possibly doing work for them. And then I saw you in the park, that your dog came up to me.
Yeah.
And I was petting the dog and we got into that long conversation.
No.
And then that turned into this.
And my
And-
heart's with the homeless, and it just wound up. You know what I mean? It was so, because I've been to ground zero. I mean, I lost everything. I was 20 years old. I was left with an IQ below 70 and a reading level of a third grader.
And now you run one of the, one
Yeah.
of the oldest restaurants in town that, the place was packed last night.
Yes.
And,
Lewis Black was in town to support the National Comedy Center across from Shawbucks, just to get a couple digs there. But the other key thing that I didn't want to not forget, because Adam's at ground zero, and he's got off to a good start. I'm proud to say I'm his first client, I think,
Yeah.
on his
Yeah.
road back. And there's another B&J Water
Yep.
is going to be the second client. We all met together last week, towards the end of or
Yeah.
the beginning of this week. I forget, time just.
Yeah, last weekend.
week's gone. Yeah, it was last week. But so what assisted me in my healing process, I lost a year of my life. And I was supposed to live the rest of my life in a mental institution, Warren State Hospital, or Gowanda State Hospital. And one day, and back then, if you said you heard voices or something like that, you'd definitely get more medication. And even 20 years ago, if you said, well, I had this voice in my head, boom, you're locked up. But I just one day just had this clarity. How am I going to do this? What's this, that, and the other? And this little voice said, the only bad experience in life is the one you didn't learn from. And that gave me a little momentum, because I said, well, I know this is a bad situation. It's horrible. And maybe if I could gain some knowledge, some understanding, and that was kind of my introductory into experiential philosophy. And maybe we can talk about that in a little bit, but mine is the energy within me is my experiential philosophy that's developed over the last 40 years. But the foundation of it is the only bad experience in life is the one you didn't learn from. And as you learn, you'll discover that you're not a victim. Nobody can choose your feelings for you but you. Nobody can make you feel embarrassment without your consent. That's original sin, but we can talk about that some other time.
I
But-
mean, I've got plenty of people to be angry with, and there's some of it that I still struggle with right now.
Right.
Through all of this, I could be mad at myself. I can be mad at, the government, and
Oh, yeah.
we'll just call them for now. I
Right.
can be mad at some other people along the way, and I go through little periods of being that way. But the more I let go of that, that's the lesson that God's trying to teach me.
Right.
Over and over. Pretty much on a daily basis. The more I let go of that, the more life is moving forward in a positive direction.
Right.
And, yeah.
So our homeless shelter, you've mentioned it in your videos. I watched like 2 or 3 after I invested in you, just so I wouldn't allow that to influence my decision making. But you haven't had that horrible experience, because when I found out you were living in our homeless shelter, I was like, I might be able to help you get in a hotel, this, that, or the other. And once I committed, I fully commit. I'm all in with whatever I do. And Adam was like, no, it would be too much paperwork. I'm planning on moving. And I'm comfortable where I am. I feel safe where I am, which says a lot to our homeless shelter. It's only guys, right? This one.
Yeah,
We
it's
have
only
other
guys.
shelters.
It's
Can you talk about your experience, and then what you think of Jamestown, and now what you think of Jamestown when you're on the other side?
There's a double. There's two sides to
Because
that.
Jamestown's, just to set things up, and I wasn't fully aware, but Jamestown's like the second poorest county in New York State.
Per capita.
Per
That's
capita,
what
is
I've
it?
read.
And then, but you have the equal and opposite. You have the Robert H. Jackson Center. You got Lilydale. You've got a lot of movers and shakers that are doing a lot of positive things. So you've got that balance. But give me your experience, like, of the homeless shelter, what they could use, cleaning supplies, and just to give people a better idea of what it's like to be homeless and what these people are suffering.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is, there's a lot of stigma about the homeless, about, oh, they're just a bunch of drunks, they're just a bunch of drug addicts, and, that kind of thing.
I know
And,
different.
Yeah, and I know different
Not just
too.
because
and
of
not,
you, but...
But, it's definitely been an eye-opener for me actually experiencing it. And
Right.
you go into this place, at any given day, there's 20 or so people in there, and you've got 20 different reasons how
And
they
it's
ended
not
up
that
there.
big of a building, really.
It's-
It's
yeah,
not overoccupied. I'm not saying
No.
that, but...
But, there's just as many different reasons people ended up there as there are people there.
Right.
And I mean, not everybody's a drug addict, not everybody, just sometimes people fall on hard times.
Every
Sometimes-
circumstance has a story.
Sometimes somebody loses their job for too long.
Right.
And they can't get back on their feet, and they lose their place to live. And
Right.
what are you gonna do? You live out of your car, or are you gonna go there? So my experience with it, when I left the place that I was living, and I put a backpack together, I had to think, of, like, what do I pack? Because I could be living out in the woods tonight. I did my homework. I knew where I
Right.
could do it. And I'm comfortable with
But
that.
with your federal probation, do you have to have a place to live? Could you
I
be
mean,
could you be homeless like the other people that are living
I
in the
don't know.
bushes,
I
or
didn't.
or would they?
Never had to worry about it yet.
Right.
That's I
That's
don't know.
fortunate you were able to. Things
Right.
unfolded the way they did,
Yeah.
but
But when
there's
I
certain
came-
criteria you have to uphold,
Right.
for a few more years of probation. I don't know what you're,
Yeah, it's like 2.5
But-
more years.
but keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, when I got to Jamestown, like I said, I didn't know what was going to happen. I'm walking around town with a 60-pound rucksack, a full-on backpacking pack. So everybody's looking at me. They're like, yeah, we know what's up. They knew.
Yeah.
And so I went to social services, and for one reason or another, they wouldn't help me in terms of finding a place to stay, at least not then.
Wait, let's back up 1 second, because you mentioned something like when you first got out of jail, what happened? When you first got out in Connecticut, remember you got out, you didn't have ID, you know what I mean? And
okay,
you,
if you wanna
is that
go
okay
back-
to share that or not?
Yeah, no,
because
that's
that's
fine.
part of your
It's
journey.
off the rails a little bit,
But I
but-
mean, my thing here is that I've always wanted to assist the homeless in that and to understand how people get homeless, but all the obstacles we face to even drive it deeper, where we could create a better system. And that's my goal with this interview, is to get a full story and what you experienced, even, and we don't have to go a long story on that step, but just
All right.
your first experience of when they came and said, you know
When
what?
they opened the door.
You might get, yes.
All right, so I tend to, fear. You talk about that.
Yeah.
And I have a tendency to think of, like, you put me in any situation that might be a little bit stressful, and I'm going to come up with all the worst possible things that can happen today.
Yes.
Or in that situation. So I do that a lot. And I find that maybe in reality, maybe 1 out of a couple hundred scenarios, the worst thing does happen.
Yes.
And so after I got released, I was supposed to be released from federal prison on April 1st. They called me down to be released, and they told me, oh, we can't book your transportation to get to Buffalo, New York properly. You're not going to be able to catch the train on time, et cetera, et cetera. So April Fools, you get to stay in jail for 1 more night. And so I got to say, what a great April Fool's prank that was for them. But so April 2nd in the morning, they sent me out the door. I was wearing a pair of shorts that you buy off the commissary, a crummy zip-up pullover, and a T-shirt.
You left with nothing to...
April 1st, had $30 cash in my pocket, and a train ticket and a bus ticket. And the way that they booked all the travel, they did me a little dirty, because I was supposed to catch... they told me, well, you're taking a train to somewhere near Long Island, and you're going to have to catch another train to Bridgeport, Connecticut. And when you get to Bridgeport, Connecticut, you're going to have 5 minutes to get from the train station to the bus that you need to take the bus to Buffalo, New York.
And you had transportation from Buffalo, just not to the...
Right, I just had
that
to get
was
to
your-
Buffalo.
Right.
And so they gave me a 5-minute window to transfer from a train to a bus.
Right.
And so, of course, the trains around New York City, they don't run on time, especially out in the outskirts. You know, Danbury, Connecticut's pretty far out
Right.
from Manhattan. And so the train got delayed and everything I ended up about 5 minutes late to the train station I was supposed to get to, and therefore I missed the bus. So now I'm stranded in Bridgeport, Connecticut, no cell phone, no ID, no anything, no money.
I'm
you know,
just
$30.
baffled that you need ID for everything other than to enter the
when
country.
they send you,
I
when they
mean,
kick you out the door of the prison, they're just like, all right, you're out.
and then
Good
when you
luck.
go rent something or this, you got to have a utility, a place where you live to rent certain things, and and you get released from a federal prison and you don't even leave there with any kind of ID.
Right.
Even if it was like a probation ID that says, this is who I am, this is my circumstances, you're just left with nothing and $30 and some train reservations
Yeah.
and a bus pass or something.
And so I missed that bus, and I was stranded in Bridgeport with no phone, no nothing. And so a stranger, out of the kindness of his heart, I told him what was going on. He let me borrow a cell phone.
Wow.
And I was able to make some phone calls and get some things in place. And then they got me in touch, my lawyer. I ended up calling my lawyer. I didn't know who else to call.
Right.
And I got sent over to there was a United States probation office in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And they told me how to walk over there. And so I got over there, and one of the probation officer in Bridgeport was super nice, really cool. He got on the phone, he started working his magic, and somehow he was able to work everything out and rebook my entire trip home so that it was a whole different trip, but he gave me enough time to get from point to point.
Right.
And I ended up getting back to Buffalo about 5 hours before I was supposed to be there. So the original trip, had it gone smooth, I would have been in Buffalo at like 1 p.m, and instead I was in Buffalo at 8 in
So
the
somehow
morning.
things always seem to work
Yeah, so
out.
it even worked,
Yeah.
even though the worst scenario happened. Right, I mean, just imagine going through that
But
2
you
hours
coulda
after
gotten-
you're out of prison, and that's your first
You could
experience
have
as
felt
being
like
stranded.
a victim and sat on a park bench somewhere and did nothing, but you took action, and
Yeah.
fortunately there was a kind gentleman that gives you a phone, and
And I was angry. I was
Yeah.
running my mouth. I was like, oh, I'm going to sue these people, and I'm
Of
going to blah, blah,
course.
blah, and I can't believe they did this to me, and all
I've-
that kind of stuff. But I
I've never thought that way, but go ahead. No, I'm kidding.
but I was able to when everything worked itself out, like I said, I got home 5 hours early.
Right.
So I can tie that into the first day of being homeless. I left the apartment where I was staying, no idea what's going to happen today. Am I going to be sleeping in the woods?
Right.
What's going on? What am I going to do? I don't know. I come down to Jamestown. I go to social services. I get there really early in the morning, because I don't know what I'm in for. They got me on, the EBT card. They got me set up with some things, but I had a couple $100 to my name in a bank account, and so they're like, well, we can't give you a place to live until you spend all your money. Like, that's just
Oh
the
my
way. And I wouldn't be able to get a hotel room with a
Right.
couple $100 cash. But I had already talked to the director down at the UCAN shelter
Okay.
a few days, because I had I had like 3 days notice that I was going to be homeless.
Right.
So I did have time to make a few
You were
phone calls and
Checking out your options.
try to see what's
Yes.
going on. And so they said, yeah, come on down, we'll help you out. And I had this, I reached a decision point. Do I try to go spend my money at a hotel and then come back to social services? Do I go find a place out in the woods, or do I go to this homeless shelter? And when I walked out of the social services building, the storm clouds were coming in, and I'm like, the homeless shelter is like 4 blocks away. I'm just going to go there. And as soon as I walked in the door of the shelter, it started downpouring outside.
You got pushed in there.
And so it was almost like, if I had gone to the hotel, I would have been drenched. If I had gone anywhere else,
Right.
So I kind of God just kind of said, go here. This is where
Right.
you're going. Go here. And it ended up being I didn't know what to expect. But you wanted to know about the shelter. It's
Yeah.
really clean. you walk in there and it's clean. In fact, they had some state inspectors show
And
up.
I'm glad to know that my money, when I donate, you know what I mean, and my heart's there. And I want to do more, but keep going.
They had the state come and inspect like they do, and the inspectors who inspected the homeless shelter here said it was the cleanest homeless shelter they'd ever seen.
That's wonderful.
So you can keep that in mind. It's a safe place. My personal belongings, a lot of people, I've done a lot of homework, and I've listened to a lot of other homeless people tell their stories. And one of the things that happens in some of the shelters is all your stuff can get stolen. And there's
Right.
other things, people are afraid of bed bugs and lice and all that kind of
Right,
stuff.
right.
Your things can get stolen, fights break out, drugs, whatever. And this place is very clean, it's very safe.
That means a lot, because nobody knows, and you're the source to speak
I
from.
packed in my backpack when I left a MacBook Pro. I mean, I'm a well-equipped homeless guy.
Right.
So that's how I'm able to do all these videos and stuff. But I had a special case and everything for my gear. I took a selection of gear, a computer, my phone, a few knickknacks and doodads, and a camera.
Right.
Thinking, I don't know, this stuff might come in handy, and it does. But I need to keep it protected and keep it safe and keep it dry and all that stuff. But they have lockers to keep your stuff safe at the shelter. Nobody there really has to, and out of even the other residents at the shelter, you can leave a phone sitting out on a table, charging, walk away from it. Nobody's going to steal it from
That's
you.
awesome to know,
At
'cause
least
that's-
I've
yeah.
not heard of that happening.
That's huge. I
It
mean,
might,
just for the people locally to know that,
Yeah.
that to hear this, it's
The food-
reassuring, and it'll encourage people to keep that momentum going, and hopefully we have the same services for the women, but this is a man's perspective,
Yeah. The food is really good. 99% of the time. They feed breakfast and dinner at the shelter. And the food, you're not going to leave the table hungry.
Right.
I've gained weight from this experience, from being there, because they feed you too much. But
Yeah.
no complaints about that. The food, home cooked food, most of the time, it's good. It's a welcoming place. They've got programs. They help people. They point people in the right directions. If people need help with addictions and things like that, they've got resources. They're connected to everybody in town.
Right.
They're connected with everybody. If you need anything, they're on it. You need things to just take care of your hygiene and your personal needs, like your deodorant, your toothpaste, your
To shave.
toothbrushes, shaving, all that stuff.
Yes.
They got you.
Cool.
And it's really due to the community around Jamestown that provides the things that they need. And, you asked, what do they need?
Right.
If you follow them, UCAN, UCAN, United Christian Advocacy Network, I think is what it stands for.
Okay.
So if you follow them on Facebook, they're always posting what they need. If they really need, like they
Right.
needed laundry detergent a couple weeks ago. We were running really low on laundry detergent. A few days later, the director takes a picture and posts it on Facebook. They've got like a whole wall of laundry detergent
Yeah.
because people just came down and dropped off buckets of laundry
That's-
detergent.
I'm always bragging about my community. I love Jamestown, New York, and we really have a kind community. And here,
Yeah.
I'm hearing the same thing from a homeless person that temporarily, you'll have a home next week,
Yeah.
but it's just, I love our community, and there's good and bad in every community, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? But
and I
people
talk
are
about-
kind here.
I'm a smart mouth, and I'm, obnoxious at times, and I talk on my own videos about Jamestown and
Right.
a lot of the rundown stuff and a lot of the problems.
Well, you weren't
that are
having
here.
a positive experience
Yeah,
to
but-
start with.
But a lot of people talk, like I've heard people say that there's a lot of mean people in Jamestown, and that's one thing I don't agree with, because I've been here for a while, and prior to the whole situation where I got arrested and the FBI smashed up my house,
Right.
prior to all of that happening, I'd been coming to Jamestown fairly regularly, and everybody I meet here is really friendly. It's like a small town vibe. It's not like, it's a small
Right.
city, big town, but it's got the small town community kind of vibe. Everybody I meet here is cool. I don't
That's
really meet
awesome.
people who are bad people anywhere I go. I mean, you even said, like, you talk to the homeless people, and I'm with them. I'm walking
Just say
around.
hi.
I'm talking to
Yeah.
them. I really don't. Maybe two people that I can think of in the last 4 months that I wouldn't
Right.
even say I had a problem with them. I've just seen people having outbursts, or I've seen
And that
some
could happen
fights.
walking around the
Right.
mall or.
Go to New
Yeah.
York City for a day and tell me people in Jamestown are rude. You'll have a different perspective.
Right. No, I agree.
Go to any big city and you'll see the difference. So I don't agree with that. And there's a lot of things around Jamestown that I like because, like I said, I've been coming up here since before 2020, to be honest.
Okay.
I'm a photographer, so I travel a lot, and I've been around Chautauqua Lake and all the different things. I'm always looking for photo opportunities and checking things out in my travels, and I've stopped in Jamestown more than once. And then, like we were saying, I had a relationship here for a while, and I was spending time in Jamestown and getting to know it a little bit more.
Right.
And then, after I got released from prison to come here instead
Right.
of where I lived in Pittsburgh.
So you're kind of stuck here, and it was hard.
Kinda.
And you're coordinating from Buffalo, I think, is it there?
Yeah, the federal probation office is in Buffalo.
Yeah. And, yeah, so Adam, I think moving forward, we've got a great thing, and Ed Tomasini, thank you so much for letting us do this today. And the Robert H. Jackson Center, which I think this is the most important place on the planet right now to have these talks, discussions about freedom of speech, crimes against humanity, crimes against the planet. Crimes against the planet's a crime against humanity. People, planet, and profit, thirdly. But with the focus of what we talked about today, with thinking of Wed Howard and feeling and that, and the three things people want to feel. They want to feel good, look good. They want to feel safe. They want to feel protected. Well, moving forward, how do you work with the homeless? How do you work with anyone, mentally ill, this, that, or the other? I mean, I'm an insider with mental health from the inside out. A lot of psychiatrists are seeing things from the outside in, making changes and adjustments. But Adam and I both bring something from ground zero forward, and moving forward based on my life philosophy, the energy within me. Energy, by definition, is the ability to create motion or movement. And I believe we do that through love or fear, the energies, authentic love or authentic fear. Because there's artificial love and there's artificial fear. I don't want to get too distracted with this, but through love you create movement, through compassion, kindness, and it's positive. And fear, it's a negative movement through shame, guilt, lack, and limitation. But they're all not bad or good, because sometimes shame will get you back on track. And the energy within me represents Mindful Eatery. And Mindful Eatery is about the law of consumption. And in my philosophy, law of consumption means you're consuming a diet of food, you're consuming a diet of thoughts, and you're consuming the environment. You could say your diet of food precedes your mood, and your mood precedes your diet of food. Your thoughts precede your biology, but your biology can precede your thoughts, and your environment's all what's going on within you. If you're not experiencing harmony within you, the outside influences is probably disharmony. So the energy within me is basically paying attention to what causes you to gain energy or what causes you to lose energy. And my thoughts moving forward is literally you can't change the way a person thinks. But you can give them a safe environment where they feel safe, protected, and they can feel better and look better within themselves. So you get that stabilization. And then you can also, with the food, start consuming more harmonious food without all the colors, the dyes, the aspartame. I mean, my family, I drive them nuts, but you're either eating, and I'm not eating perfect, you can tell, but you're either consuming authentic food that supports life, or you're consuming artificial food, which kills you, disrupts life. And there's, in our food system, I hate to say it, I mean, a lot of these patents, the colors, the dyes, aspartame, are owned by the pharmaceutical companies. And I'm sorry to say, I think they have the solution first in the laboratory. They create the illness with the food, and they sell you the solution with a pill. So everything's all information. Everything, the water's information. It's your health is information. Your environment's information. And I just think we're disrupting the harmony of the planet with the way that we grow food. I think that the answer isn't in a pill. I believe it's in the field, as my friend Paul says. And what I mean by that is the answers are within the field. Well, it's within the soil of the field. Your health is within the field of your soil and your gut and your digestive system. We can look at Chautauqua Lake and how it turns all these different colors, and the bowels of the lake are all plugged up, and they're going to free that up and get the right ecosystem. I mean, there's an ecosystem on your hands of bacteria in your mouth, and so on and so forth. And the more we can live in harmony and use love and fear to create harmony, I think that's our way forward. So you can't change the way a person thinks. But I think if we could give them an environment that they feel safe, they feel protected, they're starting to feel good and look good, but also support that with the food, I think you can heal the ways people think. I think truly it'll give them an environment so they can start thinking healing thoughts. What you think about, you bring about. Think happy thoughts for health. Think anxious thoughts for illness. Life can be that simple. It's hard to, go through these crises and hard experiences, but that's what the Mindful Eatery Project is. It's not about culinary. It's about opening and expanding your food, thought, and environment is basically the foundation that supports your mind, body, spirit. And it precedes the law of attraction, because if you're in disharmony, you're going to attract disharmony. So learning what you consume, the law of consumption, and you harmonize your food, thoughts, and environments, now you're going to attract the life you want. So with that said, Adam, you can follow up with that. We're building this into the website, so Adam and I have been having these conversations, and he's also a computer programmer, and I think a lot about conscious, subconscious, mind, collective, these out there topics, but he gets it, and I do, and it's going to be reflected in the Kurt B. Johnson website and the Shawbucks website. Yeah. So, Adam, I can't thank you enough, but you follow up here. I wanted to get my 2 cents in with a Mindful Eatery.
Yeah, you talk about healthy eating, and the last 2 years, I've experienced quite a bit of both sides of the spectrum. When you're in prison, the food is terrible. You're not getting a healthy diet, and I'll just leave it at that. I was incarcerated for about 19 months, maybe slightly more, less than 20 months, because I was sentenced to 2 years in prison. But they have good time programs and things like that, so you can get a little bit early release. But for my sentence is considered 2 years is considered a short sentence for a federal case. Right. And so I was out in 19 or so months. For the last 4 months of it, I was a little better off because at the low security prison, they had a lot of sports and rec. I was taking spinning classes. I was playing indoor soccer. I was doing all kinds of athletic things. The food was slightly better. You had a little bit better options, but for the 15 months prior to that, you're eating slop. Just bad. Really bad. Nothing but starch. And I gained 40 pounds in the time from when I was arrested to when I went to Danbury. I was 40 pounds heavier. I gained like 2 sizes in the uniforms in the prison. But in the last 4 months,
you're costing them more money. You got more different clothes you got to wear too.
For those 15 months, I was basically locked in a tiny little room. For 14 months, I was locked in a jail where I never saw the sun. For 14 months, I never know what a tree looked like. There's no windows in the place, and you're just locked in a little box, sometimes 23 hours a day.
So they're taking the vitamin D away, and you're probably not getting it back in your food or anything.
But
that's
when
insane.
When I got out, now I lost 40 pounds in the last 4 months that I was incarcerated because they moved me to a low security place where you have more freedom to walk around.
Okay.
You're still behind a barbed wire fence. The food was a little better, but
you could have movement. You're not like
the movement
stationary.
Was what did it. Yeah, having exercise was what I lost the 40 pounds I gained.
Right.
So I came home trim, and I started eating healthy, because my body didn't want to eat any junk.
Right.
All I wanted to eat was salads and fresh foods, and if I wanted to snack at night, I just want some carrots or
Right.
things that I like. But I'd eat some chocolate chip cookies with my coffee in the morning, and then the rest of the day I'm eating pretty healthy.
Oreos for me.
So, and that was like that for about a month, and I was feeling really good. My body was reacting to the good food that I was eating
Right.
and the salads and all the fresh stuff that I was consuming. And then when I became homeless, it was like going backwards in the food department, because the homeless shelter feeds us really well, but if they're putting out a salad, you're under a high stress situation, so you know about comfort food.
Right.
So you see a salad over here, but we got the sloppy Joe line over here, or the
Right.
stuffed shells over here. I'm going to the sloppy Joe line.
Right. Comfort food.
Comfort food. And when you get an EBT card, a lot of people, one of the things that Kathy Hochul did here in New York, and some other states are doing it, is they're letting people with their EBT cards go to restaurants now. Certain counties in New York are doing it. There's a couple places in Jamestown that jumped on
So
board.
they can get a healthy
A lot
meal.
of people are mad, like, oh, these people, now they can go to McDonald's on their EBT, or they can go get the lobster and, the surf and turf and all that, which you probably can. But
that's
when you're homeless and you have an EBT card and you're walking everywhere, in Jamestown, there's like
choices are limited.
Your choices are limited to a couple convenience stores and a grocery store down the street. But if you don't have a refrigerator,
like a 7-Eleven or something like.
But if you don't have a refrigerator, you don't have cupboards, you don't have a way to store things properly. Right. What are you gonna? You can go to the grocery store, but what are you gonna get?
Right.
And how are you gonna keep it fresh? And how are you gonna store? So you end up eating crummy food because it's what you have access to.
Yeah.
And so my body is kind of reacting to that. And for the last 3 or 4 months, I've noticed my energy going down. I've gained a little weight, even though I'm walking 30 to 50 miles a week.
Right.
And so I'm looking forward to next week when I go to Texas and I have a little more stability.
Right.
You're going to see me eating nothing but like salads and fresh foods and just like getting back into the swing of things to get my energy back.
So for me, on a taxpayer's point of view, I know with Chautauqua County, it's kind of like self-insured. If I got arrested, even though I have insurance and I go on our jail system, they're buying my food and all that, but also they pick up whatever medications I'm on. If I'm diabetic, if I'm this, if I'm, whatever it is. And I think a lot of we could grow our way out of this without eating the processed foods. And if someone's in jail and I'm paying for their food, I want them to have the highest and greatest food. Organic, plant-based, I'd like to have them, and look at it that way, because the money you would save on the pharmaceuticals, you have a captive audience. You know what I mean? We could really save money. They could grow their own food. I mean, there's so many other ways that we could address these situations and save the taxpayers money.
If you fed people in prison better food, there would be less illness, right?
Yeah.
So when you're
probably
sick,
less violence
when you're sick
too.
in prison, if you go to jail and you get sick in prison, if you have any kind of medical issues, they don't care. You're not getting any treatment. They're giving you like the bare minimum treatment they can possibly get away with by law. But they'll fill you with as many pills as they can get down your throat.
No, yeah.
Oh, they'll pump you full of drugs and pills all day long. There's people in the med line getting their pills 20 times a day. Every hour they're getting a new pill.
So I don't know,
they'll fill
but
you full
that's
of pills,
crazy.
but they'll give you horrible
They'll
food.
never treat your illness. They'll just
They feed you the worst food that you can find, the worst food, the cheapest, worst food that they can possibly find. They'll pump you full of pills all day long. Pill after pill after pill after pill. They were trying to get me to take pills. I'm like, no. But if you actually need an operation, if you break a leg, if you have like a medical issue,
emergency,
you're in a really bad place, because you're not going to get treated.
Right.
You are not, and if they do treat you, you're getting the bare minimum. And you've got the general public who looks at that and they say, well, who cares? Those people deserve it. They shouldn't have done what they did to get in there, so let them have it.
Yeah.
And so, there's two sides to it. But yeah, like you're saying, if you gave people healthy food, if it was, And I mean,
and a
how much
safer
would it really
environment.
cost?
I think we're really hurting ourselves and hurting them because, when you're looking at food preservatives, colors, dyes, I mean, meat's not supposed to last for 6 months, and I mean, it's got all those weird colors in the processed meats and foods and milk, and I mean, I'm at my best when I'm eliminating gluten, dairy, and sugar just because you're eliminating all those ingredients. I try to eat organic, plant-based the best I can, but I think if we create the demand for organic, plant-based foods, we can do it. Us taxpayers, we're paying for the food these prison people eat. We should have a choice what they get to eat. And if you're homeless or whatever, I'm sorry, if you want a bag of Doritos or you want to eat ill health food, you're going to have to get a job. And in my opinion, I don't want to be too harsh on anyone, but at the same time, we're feeding the problem with the food we're giving the homeless, the people in jail, or the people even in our nursing homes. Us taxpayers, we're paying for all that. We should be paying for the highest and greatest food, thoughts, and environment that we can provide, for the people on planet, services, products, and
you're
services.
only, all these people in prison, not everybody, of course, but a lot of them, they're going to be coming back out to society. So do you want to just treat them like garbage for 10 years,
Garbage
and
in,
just
garbage out.
feed them full of rotten food and not treat their illnesses, and pretty much there's no rehabilitation going on in these places. They'll give you like a jail job and pay you 20 cents an hour to sling food in the kitchen, or
Right.
do some sort of other job, but they're not rehabilitating people to come. People are
Right.
getting thrown back out. Like I said, they threw me out into society. I walked out the door with the $30 in my pocket, a pair of shorts, a t-shirt, and it
Yeah.
was snowing.
Oh my God.
It was snowing when I was in Connecticut, and I'm in a t-shirt and shorts and a
Right.
little zip-up pullover thing, and $30 in my pocket, no identification. I tried to get my driver's license and all that stuff squared away while I was in there, and they're just like, F you, do it when you go
there
home.
should be a prep before you, like at
There
least a
should
2
be.
or 3 week prep.
And
in
you'll
this
get
and-
somebody, you could get somebody's gonna go on TV who's in head of the prison system and say, well, we provide the utmost in healthcare, and we give these people opportunities, and we rehabilitate them, and we make sure that they have all their things ready when they go back out. And no, they don't. No, they don't. And I was there. I mean, I watched it happen over and over and over again. I watched a guy break his leg, and they gave him an Advil and said, go to bed.
Wow.
Like that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, you treat these people like that, and then when they come back to society, you just, it's just going to be a couple months, and they're going right back in the
Yeah.
joint because...
Right.
how do you expect these people to come back to society and be ready to come back and to change their ways?
You've got all that wasted time to prep. You got
and
a
then
captive audience.
and then the taxpayers are paying for it when they go right back in. But
Right.
a lot of these prisons are. One of the prisons that I was in is a privately run prison. It's a corporate prison. It's a corporation called.
Right.
Corrections Corporation of America runs hundreds of prisons around America.
Right.
And it's a privately run company. So the way that they make money is keeping the beds full. If the prison's
Right.
empty, they're not making money. So,
No, yeah.
And then even though a lot of these jails, the county and state-run jails, the prisons, the federal prisons, all of these things have industry around them. The people that supply the food, the people that supply the clothing, the blankets, the bedding, and the million other things.
an
that go into
industry.
It's an industry, and the only way to keep that industry profitable is to keep those
Keep
beds
those
full.
beds full.
And so,
Wow.
when you look at it and you see it even from the side I saw it from, they want these people to come back. They
Right.
put these people back out in society because they just throw them out there, and they're like,
I never looked
give it
at
like
it
a
that
few
way
weeks, they'll be right back. We'll get 'em
entirely,
back.
but so I don't know. We're pushing 2
Yeah, we're
hours. but
pushing
Thank
some
you so
time.
much, Adam, and
Yeah.
I just really enjoy my time in building this. And I can't say enough for Robert H. Jackson. I mean, this Robert H. Jackson Center is the most important place on the planet right now, no doubt. If you believe in freedom of speech, you can go to the Robert H. Jackson Center and donate, because this is built on attorneys and wisdoms of the Robert H. Jackson himself, who's from this area. You know, he held the Nuremberg trials. Pretty much, if you want, in a nutshell, it's, you know, do no harm. It's about holding people accountable for committing crimes against humanity, you know. And I personally think that goes into the patent office. If there's patents that would allow you to get 100 miles of gas, you know, if there's patents for free electric, this, that, and the other, you hear all these things. It's a crime against humanity and the planet. If these patents are locked up, it goes against every constitution of what the United States of America stands for. And Robert H. Jackson is a place to come. This is a beautiful theater here. It was a horse barn, and there's 200 seats in here, and Adam didn't know what he was walking into today when we came in here. But, I mean, it's amazing, and Ed, I look forward to working and doing more of these if you guys will allow it. And I'd like to thank Greg Peterson, the attorney that founded this. He works for Phillips Lytle, and when I reopened Shawbucks, in 2012, we closed for 3 months and remodeled and whatnot, and did a grand reopening in 2013. Greg Edwards, or not Greg Edwards, he's a friend of mine too, but Greg Peterson did give me this, a copy of Robert H. Jackson book, and this is available online, Amazon, anywhere. But Adam, for doing this with me, I mean, I want to give you this book.
Thanks.
And just honor the life of Robert H. Jackson and this center. And I want to do as many of these as I can, you know, with people like you.
Yeah.
And in the areas of food, thought, and environment, I think that's our way out. And I think it's our way that we can grow together, by the way that we treat our soil, our food, our thoughts, and our environment.
And I can suggest, I know a few people that you should get in touch with to do these interviews with, who are local here, and we can talk about that.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
After the fact.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ed.